On the 12th of June 1964, the Beatles arrived in Adelaide, Australia, and were met with huge rapturous crowds on an unprecedented scale. It was reported that over 300,000 people waved and welcomed the band as they took a convertible car ride into the city centre. They played 4 concerts at the Adelaide Centennial Hall, performing to packed audiences of those lucky fans who got tickets. The build-up to the arrival was electrifying, with teenagers queuing up to 3 days to buy concert tickets, sleeping in the lines overnight, many wagging school just to ensure they got the best seats to see the hottest music act in the world. The Beatles' visit that year was in many ways a pivotal event for sleepy little Adelaide. Adelaide in the mid-60s was a very conservative, quiet, traditionalist city. But on that second weekend of June 1964, Adelaide became the focus of the world when it gave the Beatles the biggest reception they had ever seen or would ever see again.
You were only waiting for this moment to arise. You were only waiting for this moment to arise.
Good night.
Well, actually, good eye, mate. I arrived in Adelaide 5 decades later. To be more accurate, 54 years, 8 months, and a few weeks after the Beatles' visit. In February 2019, long before COVID-19. Or as the self-proclaimed best president in the history of the United States ever, awkwardly referred to COVID-19 in the year 2020 as the Chinese virus. In my Peter Pan-like mind, I'd always been a little black beetle, which just so happens had never been noticed or discovered by the mainstream media nor audience. But currently, tours the world as an economy class traveling musician, unbeknownst to most good people I meet and mingle with, but myself, a few friends, and occasional bypassers of various street corners around the globe. As a 14 or 15-year-old kid, I sincerely envisioned myself being given civic receptions in town halls as a famed artist of some kind, just as the Beatles were given. But of course, life unfolds itself in mysterious ways. The only little civic reception I was accorded upon arrival at the Adelaide Fringe Festival was at the Once and Again Book Cafe, to which I'd been invited to perform an intimate show on a very warm South Australia February evening. The warm welcome I was given was hearty, genuine, and sincere, and it sort of looked like this.
So we are pretty excited about Vincent van Hessen, otherwise known as the Travelling Troubadour, joining us tonight. So let's start with a round of applause to welcome him. Vincent will introduce himself as well, and just before I hand over to Vincent...
A little cafe around the bend, a somewhat more elderly crowd for an audience, yet eager to check out that night's gig. At least this crowd, which built up to be my audience, seemed like they could have potentially been one of these screaming kids in the rapturous crowd that AWOL'd off school just to wave at the Fab Four. My journey to the 39th edition of the Adelaide Fringe Festival was preceded by a first ever layover visit to the city of Melbourne. After yet another lengthy train ride from Sydney with the New South Wales Rail, I arrived at the Southern Cross railway station in Docklands, Melbourne. A 10-hour train ride, which in Australian terms is considered to be a moderate length of time in relation to the size of the island. Well, the size of the continent. So far, my trip to Australia has been absolutely lovely. Wonderful country, wonderful people, and then there is Melbourne. Melbourne is my type of city, the Australian equivalent of New York City. It pops and rocks around the clock. Melbourne is the coastal capital of the southeastern Australian state of Victoria. At the city centre is the modern Federation Square development with plazas, bars, and restaurants by the Yarra River. as the Australian novelist Helen Garner was once quoted saying about this metropolis. On Melbourne's summer mornings, the green trams go rolling in stately progress. Down tunnels thick with leaves, the bright air carries along the avenue their patient chime, the chattering of their wheels. The chattering wheels that lead most green trams of Melbourne to Flinders Street railway station have a funny little historical anecdote worth mentioning. But maybe it would be better mentioning this little anecdote with a slight Indian accent. This is really amusing. Reportedly, Flinders Street station was actually intended for Mumbai, and Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus in Mumbai was meant for Melbourne. But the plans from the same firm were accidentally switched, resulting in a Gothic-style station in India and an East Indian-inspired station in Melbourne. Melbourne is pretty much all about arts, fine arts, street art, indigenous art, the lot. But Melbourne was just my layover this time round. I couldn't even properly busk there as I hadn't obtained the needed busking permits on time. Meeting all those great people on the way is awesome. But it's the travel which is annoying. It's really getting on my nerves sometimes. The weight of my luggage. I think while working, you gotta travel first class. Economy sucks. This is Melbourne for now. But it was a wonderful, exciting layover. Like a breath of fresh air after a long desert journey through the Australian outback. I yearned for more, but had to continue trucking along through the Aussie outback en route to the Adelaide Fringe Festival. Only this particular part of the journey from Melbourne to Adelaide was undertaken by bus. The brother from just before who mentioned that the worst part of touring is the actual travel, mostly when traveling economy. Well, I am he, as you are me, and you are he, and we are all, to get to the point of the matter. In many ways, the actual travel, as mentioned before, is indeed the most grueling facet of any of my self-made tours. You know, stuff like finding my connections, the platforms, queuing up, waiting endlessly, loading or unloading the gear. You know, the trivia part of traveling can become as tedious as it can get. But I must admit though, the only upside of an actual travel for myself personally is, once in a vehicle, which brings me from A to B, is in cruising mode, in motion so to say, and I'm comfortably seated in my seat, staring out of the window, gazing at the scenery, watching a movie or reading a good book, works magic on the ache of travel itself.
Seatbelts fastened, leaving that's open. A bit of roadworks taking place just before Rapagna. Hopefully they won't hold us up too much.
On occasion, it becomes almost meditative. Adding a pleasant bus driver sharing his life experience in a nutshell or two into the equation makes the travel itself even somewhat pleasant at times.
It's fairly bad for the townships to the north, a place called Charlton. They were flooded out, and they actually have the powers.
But after any form of travel, by land, sea or air, I fall into a deep, heavy slumber once I get into any stranger's bed in my new destination, and sleep off that day's travel fatigue. As it's always grueling to travel these enormous distances every few days, weeks, even every few months.
Good night.
Good night to you too, Carmen. And good night to you all, dear viewers. As of 2019, the Adelaide Fringe Festival is the second largest annual arts festival in the world after the Edinburgh Fringe, and the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. Artists from across the globe participate in the Fringe alongside homegrown talent in all forms, with some being free as well as ticketed events. The duration of the festival is 1 month, which includes contemporary work in a wide range of art forms including cabaret.
The style changes a bit.
Comedy, circus, physical theater, dance, visual art, puppetry, magic, and of course, music.
Going out, guess I won't see the right hand. Going out, guess I won't see the right hand.
The show at the Once and Again Book Cafe had been such a cozy, intimate, air-conditioned, cool evening. It was both mesmerizing and unforgettable. Even though I can't remember much of it now, I know I gladly ended up performing mostly 60s and 70s oldies for my baby boomer audience and talked about their generation rather than mine.
That's alright, my mama. Anyway you do. That's alright, my mama. Anyway you do. That's alright, my mama. Anyway you do.
Personally, I think it's the best era for pop music in the 20th century, and I perform all these oldies but goldies covers with great pleasure.
4 in the morning, the end of December. I'm writing now just to see if you're better. New York is cold, but I like where I'm living there. Music on Clinton Street all through the evening. I hear that you're building your little house deep in the desert. You're living for nothing now. I hope you're keeping some kind of record. Yes, Jane came by with a lock of your hair.
Temperatures shot to over 40 degrees centigrade in Adelaide during the hot South Australian summer months in which the Adelaide Fringe Festival take place. On one of those particularly sweltering summer days, walking the streets of Adelaide with my 30 kilos or so gear packed in a suitcase in tow to do a show was an almost unbearable undertaking. I was schlepping my gear to do a show at the Tandanya Arts Cafe. Tandanya is a word in the Kwama language meaning Red Kangaroo Place. The building itself is located on Kwama land and lies within the traditional location of the Red Kangaroo ceremony, which is connected to Red Kangaroo dreaming.
And when she came by, she was nobody's wife. When I see you there with a rose in your teeth, one more thing, gypsy thief. When I see James away, she sends her regards.
The Tandanya National Aboriginal Cultural Institute, usually referred to as Tandanya, is an art museum located on Granville Street in Adelaide. And boy, I miscalculated the distance between the hostel and the Tandanya by a long shot. Tandanya specializes in promoting Indigenous Australian art, visual art, music, and storytelling. Even my own storytelling. Now, since I'm such a well-known artist in non-existing circles, my crowd consisted of no more than maybe 15 people at the most in the Tandanya Arts Cafe, which was thankfully pleasantly air-conditioned. At least, A few good people bothered to come out, escape the heat, enter the hall, grab a seat, and check out a wandering troubadour on a mini world tour, traveling economy.
For the very first time I bless my eyes on you, girl. My heart says follow through. But I know now that I'm way down on your line. But the waiting feel is fine. So don't treat me like a puppet on a string. 'Cause I know how to do my thing. Don't talk to me as if you think I'm dumb. I wanna know when you're gonna come. See, I don't wanna wait in vain for your love. I don't wanna wait in vain for your love. I don't wanna wait in vain for your love.
On one of the festival days, by sheer chance, while having a break and a drink between shows, I had a chance meeting with the most charismatic in full attire, Jingzilla. The 7-foot tall, or 2-meter-13 Australian native, whose real name is Ben Hudson, also referred to as the glam monster Jingzilla. This ginger bearded bombshell is multifaceted. A TV personality, theater maker, singer, model, and MC. There's no stopping her once she starts rolling. So of course, I shot some footage of her majestic entertainment in action and was amazed by how she could move her audience into tears with her literally huge presence. The general sensation of the busking experience in the Random Mall in Adelaide, Australia's first pedestrianised mall, during the Adelaide Fringe Festival, wasn't the best busking experience I've ever enjoyed per se. The artistic level of quite a few of them wasn't on the most creative level. The heat was almost unbearable, predominantly between 12 and 4 p.m. But thanks to either cosmic karma or the support of nature, like finding a needle in a stack of hay, I was introduced to Jennifer Hannum in the Randall Mall one day and discovered an amazing busker and great singer-songwriter.
When I say I am tired, I mean I'm falling. I'm a bit blurry and the mood is quiet. Listen to sad songs that I know only make me cry. And I'm homesick for some peace of mind. So I'm turning around, turning against myself, need help just to help myself. It's tough being on the wrong side of a dangerous mind.
I was quite taken aback by her talents, so I shot a few videos of her performing a few of her somewhat esoteric songs. Her voice, her presence, and her melodic lines touched a few leftover feathers of my soul, and surely touched a few more souls. I could surely sense that.
And I smothered the flames, I thought I could hold on. Chlorine at my chest and at the threads I sew. What can I do to make this heart feel satisfied? And I'm homesick for some peace of mind. So I'm turning around, turning against myself, need help just to help myself. Is tough being on the wrong side of a dangerous mind. Dangerous mind.
darkness fell upon the Adelaide Fringe Festival, we ended up sitting down on the still very warm pavement around the art gallery of South Australia to jam a little bit, chit-chat and whatnot, when we were joined spontaneously by a group of a few young ladies, quite wasted and intoxicated, but very excited to meet these street musicians seated on the streets of their native continent, the original Australian people.
Please, can you put, like, we're singing this song, look. So how will I record?
My first sporadic contact with Aboriginal people, and those three ladies attempted to sing us a traditional song. The outback of Australia. Pretty gloomy and boring. Swung back to Melbourne for a layover once more. 2 days with good people, Fringe Festival's encore. Children, laughter, a swim in a lake. My life on tour is a warm piece of cake. Carrie Carmen, a strawberry pie. A kangaroo family, relieved of a sigh. Melbourne to my right, Sydney to my left. Here I am, so much fun to sing wham, bam, and thank you, ma'am.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good. Good night to you too, Carmen, and thank you, and of course, your beautiful family too, ever so much. I was back in Sydney, busking away at the Circular Quay, day in, day out. It almost felt like homecoming, and home is where the heart is. The Circular Quay in Sydney is where I laid my hat to make a buck or two and call it home to see who is who. Opportunities presented themselves to shoot a few videos for my pretty much ailing and anonymous YouTube channel. We took these few opportunities to shoot videos on two of the most breathtakingly beautiful beaches around Sydney, namely the Balmoral and Clovelly beaches. Starring a son of a beach, stuck like a leech to the trees by the orchards, suckling his peach.
When the night the game he plays, it plays for keeps. Hustling times in ghetto streets, trying to get over. The sun is trying to do you all. Taking all that he can take, gambling with the odds of fate, trying to get over. Trying to get over. Trying to get over. Trying to get over. Ooh, Superfly.
Having spent about 3 months on this not deserted desert island named Australia, excuse my French, the continent of Australia,
The end is near, and so I face the final curtain.
I couldn't help thinking of the symbolically personified friendship I've made with the busking scene on the Australian continent. It gave me a sense of value, freedom, and self-exploration and expression within the musical field in many, many ways. It felt painful having to depart this unusual scene with which I felt interwoven, connected to, and somewhat integrated with.
Was that your cue?
just like in the movie Castaway, starring Tom Hanks, in which Wilson, a mere volleyball, serves as Tom Hanks' character, Chuck Nolan's personified friend. Leaving the ball, my metaphor for the sphere of Australia, made me feel somewhat sad. It felt like losing a great friend who had been there in all my moments of need, on this dry and beautiful desert island. So upon departure from Australia, I hence cried out symbolically,
Wilson! Wilson!
Not able to fathom we must part ways. I'll have to fly away, back to where I came from, and pick up where I last left. Only this time, a few experiences richer. Now I hope you liked the long third and final part of the Go Vince 19 viral tour. Make sure to leave a like, click subscribe, ring the bell. This will surely make me feel psyched. Have a good one, y'all, and see y'all very soon. Ciao, ciao.